Laidlaw here, coming to you from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson, celebrating over 60 years of selling Harley-Davidsons in the Los Angeles area. So today I'm going to be going over the 2019 Ultra Limited, talk to you guys a little bit about the new stuff that's on the 2019, the model year bike. Before we get started, I just want to let you guys know about a finance promotion right now that we're doing. Harley-Davidson is offering a 2.99% financing for 60 months on brand new touring chassis bikes. This offer is good until March 23rd. So if you're looking for a touring bike right now, brand new bike, come in and see us and get this 2.99% APR. If you want further details, there's a link in the description below where you can fill out a credit application and see if we can get you approved for this low APR offer. Alright, so let's get into this bike here. So this is a 2019 model year Harley-Davidson Ultra Limited. The Ultra Limited is pretty much the flagship all-in touring machine that Harley-Davidson builds. The only bikes that are arguably more equipped or more heavily equipped than this are the CVOs. So besides the CVOs, this is the best of the best as far as all your creature comforts and storage capacity and wind deflection and passenger comfort. So let me take you through this bike, but I think first off, what I want to do in this video is kind of take you guys through a brief history on the Electroglide. This is an Electroglide, by the way, guys. This is the Electroglide Ultra Limited. But let me take you guys kind of through the evolution a little bit of the Electroglide motorcycle and kind of talk to you guys about how we arrived at the current model year offering and what exactly you get with the Ultra Limited. So let's go back a decade, 10 years ago, to the 2009 model year. So in the 2009 model year, Harley-Davidson launched their new frame, which is part of the reason why we're going back to that model year as well. And for the record too, guys, if you guys are in the used bike market, I would highly recommend against getting anything pre-09 in the touring chassis. That touring chassis that they introduced in the 09 model year is single-handedly the biggest upgrade in the touring bikes probably ever in the history of the motor company on the touring chassis class bikes. Really what that equates to is you being able to, everything, the ride quality, the handling, the stiffness of the frame. They stiffened up the rear swing arm. They used 50% less parts and welding, so there's less flexion points on this new frame. Just everything is more reactive out on the highway and just carries heavier loads as well. So highly recommend the new frame. But let's move back to 2009 and the Electroglide offering that Harley-Davidson had during that model year. So you basically had three different bikes. The first one, the least expensive price of the three, is going to be the FLHT, which is the Electroglide Standard. And basically what this was just kind of like your bare bones Batwing model. So you had no radio, you had no tour pack. And by the way, this bike came out years before the Street Glide, and I feel like this was one of the bikes that kind of paved the way for the Street Glide. I wish I would have included this bike in my Street Glide video I did a little while back. If you guys haven't seen that, check it out to kind of see how the Street Glide really revolutionized the touring bike market as we see it today. But anyways, you had the bare bones Electroglide, the FLHT. Then you had an Electroglide Classic, which was an FLHTC. What you got with that bike is you added the radio system on the bike, and you also added a tour pack. So this was quite a big jump up. I will say the finishes on the engine were a little bit nicer on the Electroglide Classic as well. The Electroglide Standard, the FLHT, just kind of had that bare like silver without like the wrinkle black on it. It got dirty real easily, and it really was easy for it to get dingy looking. So the third and final Electroglide in the 2009 model year is the Electroglide Ultra Classic. So this was the top tier, the highest of the three bikes, again not including any CVOs. But this bike, basically what you got above and beyond the Classic is you got the lower leg fairings on the Ultra, and you got the two additional speakers backed by the passenger. So a total of 4 speakers as opposed to the 2 speakers on the Electroglide Classic. Now there are a couple other things and a couple other differences over the years between these three models, but basically that was the biggest difference between the Classic and the Ultra. Now the very next year, in the 2010 model year, Harley-Davidson came out with the Ultra Limited. And the Ultra Limited is the bike that I'm going to be doing the video on today in the 2019 model year. So the Ultra Limited technically first came out in the 2010 model year. And the big difference that the Limited had over the other bikes that year was the fact that it was 103 cubic inches as opposed to 96 cubic inches. So bigger engine. The other thing in the 2010 model year, you could only get the Limited in 2-tone paint. You also got heated grips. The gauges were like a titanium backed gauge. So a couple other little finishes that were a little bit nicer on the Limited. You also had a chrome and black wheel as opposed to just like a bare aluminum and black wheel contrast cut. So a couple little finishes that were a little bit nicer, but really the big thing in the 2010 model year when the Limited first came out was the fact that it had bigger displacement. You had a 103 cubic inch engine. Now over the next few years, Harley-Davidson introduced that 103 cubic inch twin cam to several more of its bikes. But the Limited was the first bike to get that bigger engine. And that's one of the things in the 19 model year that the Limited has over the other electric glides is the fact that it has the 114 as opposed to the 107 Milwaukee-Eight. So let's fast forward a little bit to the 2014 model year. The 2014 model year was a huge year for the touring chassis bikes. That's when Harley-Davidson came out with Project Rushmore, not to be confused with Mount Rushmore or Project Mount Rushmore. I always cringe when people call it Mount Rushmore. But anyways, that's when Harley-Davidson introduced its twin cooling engine on their Limited. So here's kind of a shot. Again, this is a 19 model year bike, the one I'm doing the review on, but you can see where the lines pipe in coolant to the heads. It circulates around the hottest part of the engine, around the exhaust part of the engine. So that was a big differentiator between the Limited and the Ultra Classic in the 14 model year, was the fact that the Limited had the twin cooled engine, and then your Electric Glide Ultra Classic just had the regular air-cooled engine still. Along with the twin cooling in the 14 model year, Harley-Davidson introduced a ton of changes. They redesigned the fairing, the Batwing fairing, which hadn't been done for decades. So they went to that slipstream fairing that we see today on the bike, where it equalizes the pressure in the rider bubble with the vent that you can open and close. The Road Glide went on a 1-year hiatus in the 14 model year. Everyone was scared and crying that Harley-Davidson got rid of the Road Glide. But yeah, in the 14 model year with the Project Rushmore, they applied over 100 changes to the touring bikes. The one-touch system, this latch right here that I'm opening up, that changed, whereas before that you had that hokey little latch on the side of the handlebar that you had to take a 5-day tutorial class on just how to open up the saddlebag. So Harley-Davidson made a lot of changes that really made it easier to kind of operate these bikes on the fly out on the road. They redesigned the tour pack design as well, made it bigger, although what it seemed to look like smaller, it actually was bigger. But the 14 model year, that was a big year. Now, the very next year in the 2015 model year, Harley-Davidson introduced low versions of both of their electric glides. Now, and in case I didn't already say it, the 2013 model year was the last year of the Electric Glide Classic, the one without the lower leg fairings and without the speakers back by the passenger. The last year of that bike was in 2013. So now we just have the two electric glides. So in the 15 model year, they introduced two more electric glides, which were low versions of the Ultra Classic and the Ultra Limited. So basically in the low version, what you had was you had a lowered front and rear suspension. You had a shorter windshield by about 2 inches. You had handlebars that were brought back about 2 inches closer to the rider. You had a seat that was a lower seat height. You had passenger floorboards that were smaller so as to not hit the back of the calves of the rider when you had your feet down. And that's about it. So yeah, really what that did was it opened up the availability to these bikes to be ridden by people that were a lot shorter. So guys that were maybe 5'7" and shorter could now get on a Ultra Limited low and feel confident riding the bike. So it really opened up Harley-Davidson's flagship touring machine to guys that historically couldn't ride them because the seat height was too tall. So now that those models ran between the 15 and 16 model year. In the 17 model year, that's when they came out with the Milwaukee-Eight, which was another huge upgrade, huge milestone for the Harley-Davidson world and big twin bikes. What they did was they scrapped the low version of the Ultra Classic, and now you just had the Limited low, and then you still had the Electric Glide Ultra Classic and the regular Limited as well. So you had 3 of the Electric Glides. This model year, in the 2019 model year, this represents another kind of a big shift in what this bike offers above and beyond the Ultra Classic. So you still have the fact that this is a twin-cooled bike that's been the same since the 2014 model year that you don't get on the regular Electric Glide Ultra Classic. And this year, you get the 114 Milwaukee-Eight, whereas the year prior in 2018, they both came with a 107, so there really wasn't much of an upgrade there. The other difference in this year, and it was last year as well, is the bigger 6.5 infotainment screen that comes standard on the Limited. You have to pay an upgrade fee of $895 to get that bigger screen on the Ultra Classic. That bike, just without the upgrade, comes with the 4.3-inch screen that does not have your navigation capabilities. I get a lot of questions, guys, people asking me, why is it that no one ever talks about the Electric Glide Ultra Classic? Everyone just talks about the Limited. No one can find any reviews on the Electric Glide Ultra Classic. And for me, guys, I can just speak personally. I don't order any of those bikes at my dealership. The reason being is just at the price point, because it's so close, especially if you outfit the regular Ultra Classic the same way as the Limited with the screen and everything. They're only about $2,000, $2,500 price difference. So for a little bit more money, you might as well just go all in and get the Limited. And so I get very, very few people even requesting the Ultra Classic. For that reason, I don't know how much longer Harley-Davidson is going to keep it around. I think I mentioned already they scrapped both of the low models this year as well, so you can no longer get the Limited low this model year. They kind of scrapped it halfway through the model year. There's a couple 19s out there floating around. And there's probably still a couple 18s floating around as well. We have one at our dealership right now. We have an 18 Limited low. So if you're looking for that bike and you need the low, get it quickly because Harley-Davidson discontinued the low versions. So with the Limited, you have the water cooling and you have the bigger screen stock. You don't have to pay extra for that. And you have the glossy interfering as opposed to the dull black interfering. You have a little bit nicer finish on the wheels and you still have the heated grips. Whereas on the Ultra Classic, you don't have any of those options. The infotainment system that's brand new this year is pretty dang nice. If you haven't heard already, it's the 6.5 GTS. Basically, they upgraded the software. It's a completely new interface. It's a lot faster. So the processor in the unit, I'm guessing, is just a more up-to-date processor where it's just a lot quicker, boots up quicker, navigates from screen to screen a lot quicker. It's a lot more intuitive, easier to use for someone who has never used it before. You got this back button on here, which wasn't here before. So that makes it go back one screen. It makes it, once again, easier to navigate the new system. Highly recommend the new system. I wish I had it on my bike. I have a 2018 model year Street Glide, and so I was the year right before the new radio. But if you want to learn more about the radio, I'm going to put a link to my video in the upper right-hand corner. It kind of gives my overview and kind of first look at the new radio system, or infotainment system, I guess I should more accurately call it. Here's a shot of your analog gauges. So you've got a fuel gauge, you got a speedo, you've got a RPM tach, and you've got a voltmeter as well. You got a 6-gallon fuel tank in here. In California, it's recommended you put 91 octane, basically your premium fuel. Depending on what altitude you're at, that's going to change as far as your octane rating. But this is a little trap door here. This has been here since 2014 with the Project Rushmore. You have a USB cable here. You can put your cell phone in this cubby hole and you can charge your cell phone. And by hard connecting it to the system, you can also stream your music off of your phone as well. You can also stream your music wirelessly via Bluetooth is what I do most of the time. You have a little bit different functionality though if you plug it in directly. And also this new radio system I should mention as well is you have the ability to do Apple CarPlay. And in my video that I linked in the upper right hand corner, I demonstrate the Apple CarPlay as well. The benefit to the Apple CarPlay is it's just a very familiar user interface across all your vehicles if you use Apple CarPlay on all your vehicles. So it's like you don't have to learn the radio, you just use Apple CarPlay and you immediately just kind of have to just learn one system. And so it's just easier to just kind of jump right into it and get what you want. And it kind of mirrors your phone up on the screen as well. And there's some apps that are compatible with Apple CarPlay as well. So kind of a nice system. You do have to have your mic plugged in though, either wirelessly, which requires you to get the WIM wireless headset interface module and one of the new wireless headsets, which by the way, Harley-Davidson just came out with new wireless headsets, which is kind of nice. Or this bike comes with a wired headset that you can just plug directly into the center console there and attach it to your helmet. But you have to have voice command abilities, which requires you to have a microphone for you to use the Apple CarPlay and kind of get the full user experience on there. I don't want to spend too much time here, guys, but there's really no better resource than Harley-Davidson.com to check out all the available colors. So the first one is Vivid Black, which is the color I'm using for the demonstration bike in this video. Next one that you can get in the 2019 model year is the Wicked Red and Twisted Cherry. By the way, guys, let me know what color you guys like the best. Second color is industrial grade denim and black denim. It's kind of been a long time in coming. Harley-Davidson has slowly kind of migrated the denim colors over to the full baggers, the full touring bikes, but they have arrived and you can get this bike in a full two-tone denim color now. This is a really nice color. I personally like this color a lot. This is the Midnight Blue and Barracuda Silver. Pretty nice two-tone. The Midnight Blue is a new color this year. And the internet doesn't really do it justice. You got to see it in person. The Midnight Blue is very, very dark. Unless it's in the sunlight, it almost looks black. Okay, so here's kind of a wild color here. You got scorched orange and black denim. So this is a combination of both gloss paint and denim paint mixed with one another. Very rarely we ever see this on any motorcycle, any manufacturer doing this besides Harley or Davidson right now. So pretty bright color, pretty wild color. Haven't sold one of these yet. I didn't order any. There's not really a big demand for it, at least at our dealership. This is called Silver Flux and Black Fuse. This is considered a custom color, so you do pay about $1,000 more on the custom color than you do just like a regular solid color. And the next color here, you can get this bike in a Peace Officer Edition, guys. So there used to be several Peace Officer Edition bikes you could get. You used to be able to get a Heritage and a Fat Boy and an Ultra Classic or Ultra Limited, depending on what model year we're talking about. But this is the only Peace Officer bike you can get anymore. And basically you have to be either active or retired Peace Officer to get this bike. Dealerships do their own pricing on these motorcycles. We've always been a law enforcement and military preferred dealership, and you can also get it in the dark blue Peace Officer, and then you can also get it in the Firefighter. The Firefighter is, again, just vivid black with like an orange pinstriping, or you can get it in the Fire Engine red. These two colors on the end, this Arctic White Shrine, these are for Shriners only, so you have to be part of the Shrine group, which is kind of an elite motorcycle rider group. Or then you've got the Jester bike, again, just like a Freemason type of riding group that gets these bikes. We don't sell very many of them. They're special order only. So you got the twin-cooled Milwaukee-Eight 114, like I mentioned. This is 122 foot-pounds of torque. This is measured at the crank. They're going to get somewhere around 110 foot-pounds of torque at the rear wheel. This bike is 877 pounds. The seat height is 27.5 inches. Those are some of your key stats that people ask about a lot. And here's your price for a vivid black one. It's $28,089. When you jump up to a color, it's $28,689. So about $600 more for something in a color. And then another $500 if you want something in a two-tone. And then again, if you want that two-tone custom color, the Silver Flux and Black Fuse color, you can tack on another $1,000, $1,100 for that. So yeah, it definitely goes up. Here's your special edition Police Officer and Fire. Harley's got them at $28,399. Yeah, you got a 10.5 to 1 compression ratio, which is bumped up on this Milwaukee-Eight as compared to the twin cam. Running order weight is 910 pounds. So I guess the weight that I just showed you earlier was not wet. That was without the fluids in it. So 122 foot-pounds of torque. This bike, and here's the fuel economy, people ask that a lot, 43 miles to the gallon is kind of the estimated. I typically get somewhere around 35, 36 on these bikes. I don't know if it's because of the way I ride, or I ride more city than highway, although I don't. I think it's because I'm always pushing it on the highway when I do ride. The other question I get asked about a lot is horsepower. Harley-Davidson does not publish horsepower. These bikes will do about 88 horsepower at the rear wheel with the 114. The 107 does about 80 horsepower at the rear wheel. 114 does about 88 horsepower at the rear wheel. All right, so let's take the bike out. So it was kind of rainy this day, and we were kind of time constricted. I usually like to have Nick or Andrew jump on the bike as well, so you can hear kind of their perspective as well. But for purposes of this review and the fact that it was raining and everything else, I just took it out. So you're just going to hear my opinion on the 2019 Electric Glide Ultra Limited here. I brought Nick along for his third-party film work. So yeah, you have the third-party shots that you guys have requested over the years. But anyways, yeah, let's jump into this review here. So starting off with the review system that I've been implementing for the 2019 model year bikes. Engine and performance, I'm going to give this bike a 6 on my scale, and a lot of that score kind of comes down to the power to weight ratio, because the Milwaukee-Eight 114 produces really good power, and it's really strong as far as it being able to move this 900 plus bike down the road. But when you compare it to some of the Softails that also have a 114 in here, this bike is not going to accelerate nearly as quickly as some of the Softails with a 114 in there as well. So that being said, the power to weight ratio is pretty dang good on these bikes. If you compare, if you go back several years, guys, and compare this bike to like the twin cam 88 that you could get in the early 2000s up until 2007 when they came up with the 96. I mean, the Milwaukee-Eight is just so much more well suited for these big heavy cruiser bikes. I mean, you can be going up a steep incline with a passenger on the back, fully loaded for an overnighter, and this thing is still going to pull really hard up a hill. So, from the 107 to the 114, there is a nice bump. It is noticeable. It's not a huge bump. It's not a big enough bump where I'd be like, hey, get rid of your 107 immediately and get a 114. But it is nice to have the 114, and because it is available, I would recommend the 114 over the 107, especially if you're on this bigger bike and you do ride with the passenger quite a bit. I would recommend the 114. As far as roll-on power, cracking the throttle on the highway, this thing will pull even in 6th gear. So the Milwaukee-Eight is definitely a nice upgrade. It handles the heat a lot better. Now you've had the twin-cooled engine on this bike since 2014, and so the Milwaukee-Eight does run slightly cooler than even the twin-cam twin-cooled bike, but it runs a lot cooler than like your non-twin-cooled bikes. So yeah, once again, just one more thing that's kind of makes this more well-suited for out on the open road when you're in heavy hot temperatures and things like that. You got a 6-speed transmission, been that way since 2007 when they came out with the 6-speed. It works well. The gearing is very good. One of the things that's nice about a Harley-Davidson is you pretty much always have access to that power. You've got a very flat power band on this bike. You don't have to rev it out or really keep it at any 1 RPM to really access the power. You've always kind of got that roll-on torque, which is really nice. As far as mechanical sound, Harley-Davidson really tried to reduce that with the Milwaukee-Eight. That was one of kind of their objectives is to just make it so you hear the exhaust note above like the valve train and everything. So they went back to a single cam drive, and they put less parts in these Milwaukee-Eights so as to reduce the engine chatter in here, which is definitely noticeable when it gets hot. If you compare this bike to like a twin cam and they're both really hot side by side, the Milwaukee-Eight is more of a refined sound and it's a quieter sound as well. Reliability is really good. On the 107 and the 114 Milwaukee-Eights have been really, really good. The issues that have come to light are the oil sumping issues. We've seen those in some bikes. We've seen them more so in the Screaming Eagle bikes. They have like the Stage 4 more than anything. Harley-Davidson's kind of been working through a oil pump issue. They've come out with a most recent oil pump that since we've installed those in some of the bikes that have had failures, everything's been working fine thus far. So yeah, I think the oil pump issue has been resolved at this point. Most of the bikes, however, have never had any issues with the oil pump, but like the internet goes, everybody's blowing it way out of proportion. The other thing that we're seeing as far as reliability goes, and I guess the other issue I'll bring up because I don't try to sidestep any issues that are brought up, is the fluid transfer issue. So reportedly there's been fluid transferring from the transmission into the primary case, and John Maxwell actually made a pretty good video talking about this in his Milwaukee-Eight. I'll link that in the description below. He talks about the Milwaukee-Eight problems that have arisen. This one isn't a problem. I've never really heard of anybody having a failure due to this fluid transfer. When I did my first service on my 2018 Street Glide, I had some fluid transfer. It wasn't enough to really ever harm the bike or affect the bike. My best advice to you guys is if you follow the intervals, the service intervals on these motorcycles, your 1K, your 5, your 10, your 15,000 mile services, it will never have enough fluid transfer to really affect the bike. I'm pretty confident, at least. I guess I can't guarantee that, but we have never at our dealership had an issue where there was any type of fluid transfer issues. We've seen the fluid transfer in some circumstances, but it's never been where it left too little of fluid in the transmission to affect it. So there was that issue. And as far as Milwaukee-Eight issues, I think those are the two issues that get brought up. But the majority of the Milwaukee-Eights and the bikes that I've sold, people are absolutely loving them. And yeah, they have put a ton of miles on them, and so far so good. So this is the third model year in a row we've seen the Milwaukee-Eight. Personally, on my Milwaukee-Eight, I'm loving it. It's been 100% perfect. Like I said, I had a little bit of a fluid transfer issue, but yeah, it didn't affect anything. Jamie pointed it out, and he when he did my 5K, or excuse me, my 10K service, he changed the fluids and made them the appropriate levels. So the next thing here is the handling and suspension. The suspension and the overall comfort on this thing is extremely good. There's really not too many more comfortable motorcycles in the world. Everything from the frame to the seat to the suspension is just really, really good. And it's a significantly better ride, guys, than the Road Glide and the Street Glide. I get so many guys coming in that they make a purchase with their emotions. Maybe they like the look of the Road Glide and the Street Glide better, and I don't blame them for that. You should definitely want your bike to look the way you want it to look, but I don't think people are honest about the type of riding and the type of application they're going to use their bike for. So what I mean by that is, if you're going to ride with your passenger quite a bit and you guys are going to do overnighters and you need the storage space, get the Limited or get the Road Glide Ultra. You're going to save a little bit of money than if you were to buy like a Road Glide or a Street Glide and outfit your bike with the tour pack and the better seat, the bigger windshield, and the heated grips. You're going to spend less if you get those bikes, the Limited, in the first place, than try to outfit your Street Glide or Road Glide with all those extra amenities. So you just need to be honest about your application, your use of the motorcycle, and just get the bike that best suits your needs. You know, I get a lot of guys that buy the Road Glides or Street Glides, and 3 years later they find that because they ride a lot and they do overnighters with passengers on the back, that they have bought the tour pack, they bought the heated grips, they bought a taller windshield, and they bought a more comfortable seat, and they bought taller shocks. They're over the price of an Ultra Limited, and they feel like they should have just bought an Ultra Limited in the first place, but since they were buying with their emotions and they liked the look of the Street Glide on the floor better, they bought the Street Glide. So just be honest about how you're going to ride the bike. By the way, guys, it was raining this day, and so I'm getting rain droplets on our cameras, so I apologize for that. But anyways, yeah, the handling too, guys, and I mentioned the frame change in 2009. Ever since 2009, these bikes have handled very, very well. You know, for 900 pounds, you can throw this thing around extremely well. I mean, taking these things through the canyons, they're really, really fun. That's kind of the biggest comment I got from my customers, especially too since the Project Rushmore in the 2014 model year, when they beefed up the front end and put the bigger steering head bearing on these bikes. People are extremely impressed with how agile these heavy cruisers are in the canyons. If you go back to the early 2000s, these things were just kind of a chore to take up canyon roads. Nowadays, these in the 2019 model year, with all the changes they've made, these things are very fun. You know, I take my Street Glide through the canyons all the time, and I have a lot of fun going through the twisties on it. Are they as nimble and agile as the Softails? No. For that reason, I'm going to give this bike a 6. The suspension is taller as well, I will say, on the Ultra Limited than like your Street Glide and Road Glide. So yeah, just a ride comfort going down the freeway is very, very good. If you are a long trip, high mileage kind of a dude or dudette, then these full touring bikes, the Ultra Limited, are very, very good and a great option. And that's one of the things that I always recommend to people when they buy a Street Glide or a Road Glide. Those rear shocks, there's just not enough travel in those things. You know, unless you're really short and you need to get your feet close to the ground, I always recommend going to a longer travel shock on those bikes, especially like a nicer, like a Fox or a Russ Ornament or progressive suspension or Öhlins or something like that. You can adjust the rear shocks, and that's another thing that's really going to help out with the comfort too, guys, is there's a preload adjustment in the rear shocks. You take out the left saddlebag and you dial the preload based on how much weight you have on the motorcycle. This is probably one of the most overlooked things on these bikes, you guys. So if you're having suspension issues or the ride isn't as comfortable as you think maybe it should be, I would highly recommend pulling out your owner's manual and dialing in the proper preload based on the weight that you have on the bike and the load. The other thing that's pretty dang nice on these bikes is the lean angle, you guys. You will scrape if you try, but the lean angle is pretty dang good, and that kind of adds to what I was saying earlier about being real fun and playful in the turns and everything, because the lean angle is pretty dang good. But going down, nothing can really beat this bike going down the highway at high speeds in a straight line. I mean, the comfort is just amazing. I mean, you're like on a recliner going down the freeway. So let's jump into braking. So this bike has Brembo brakes on there. It's been that way since I believe the 2008 or 9 model year. These Brembos are just really, really good. You got a 4-piston caliper in the front, dual disc brakes, single disc brake in the rear, and you have ABS as standard equipment on the Limited as well. The ABS works really well. It's independent front and rear, so the front wheel ABS can engage without the rear wheel engaging, which is nice because that's going to be better for regaining traction in a sudden stop situation. The brake feel and effort is really good as well. I mean, meaning that you don't have to really crunch on the brakes. It's pretty seamless as far as where the brakes bite in the range of motion and the brake lever as well. And so for braking on this bike, and a lot of this kind of goes into braking distance, and my score on this kind of takes a hit a little bit because it doesn't brake as fast as some of the Softails. So on this bike, I'm going to give the braking a 6. Really good, but doesn't brake as fast because of the weight as some of the Softails that I would rate higher in the braking category. Utility on this bike, I'm going to give this a 9. The utility is extremely good, and you can compare this to any motorcycle in the world as far as utility. I'd still give it a 9 or even higher. You know, as far as motorcycles go, I can't think of motorcycles that really have any more utility than this bike, except for some of these bikes out there that you have a mechanical windshield, a power windshield that goes up and down. But you know, you've got navigation, GPS, you've got Bluetooth, you've got the hand warmers on this bike, which, by the way, I had the hand warmers on when I was riding this day, and I had it set to about a 3, and they kept my hands very, very toasty. It wasn't that cold outside. It was probably somewhere in the 40s, but the hand warmers worked very, very good. I mean, I can't even imagine if you dialed it all the way up to the max, which is like a 9, and your hands would be frying. Funny story as a side note, when we used to rent bikes, I had a guy come back. It was the middle of the summer. It was like 100 degrees outside, and he came back, and the grips were on like a 9, the max. And he says, the bike was awesome, Matt, except for one thing. These grips are just frying my hands. I can't hold onto the bike for longer than like 3 or 4 minutes at a time. I don't know why the rubber gets so hot. And I showed him, I was like, dude, well, you have the hand warmers on the max setting on this motorcycle, bro. Like, you should probably turn that down. And we both got a good laugh out of it. And the guy felt like an idiot because he came back from like Death Valley or something like that with the hand warmers on. Anyways, the hand warmers, the heated grips, they work very, very well. As far as lighting is superb on this motorcycle. You've got the middle headlamp and the 2 passing lamps, LED day makers. You've got LED turn signals on the rear tour pack. You got a halogen bulb tail light in the rear as well. So you can even go a step further and get Harley-Davidson's wraparound LED lights that wrap around the back of the saddlebags as well if you want to get even more conspicuous. If you take off the tour pack and get the removable tour pack kit, which is about $600 by the way, then you have to have those added turn signals on the back of the saddlebags, because when you remove your tour pack, you're also removing your turn signals as well. Gauges, you got plenty of gauges and everything on here. I'm moving on to the next one, touring capacity. This bike is an awesome tourer, which kind of goes along the lines of utility as well. But touring capabilities are amazing. I'm going to give this bike a 9 out of 10 on the touring capability. For long hauls, this thing is awesome. Another thing too, guys, about Harley-Davidson that pretty much dominates any other make of motorcycle is the storage capacity. Your usable space in the tour pack and the saddlebags is better than any motorcycle out there. And I mean, you compare it to like a Goldwing or something like that. You open up the bags on a Goldwing, there's all these weird like bulges in the bags, and just it's terrible space. It's not good usable space. So the space and storage capacity on a Harley-Davidson is awesome. Wind deflection is really good. You got a taller windshield on this bike than you have on a lot of the other touring bikes, like the chopped, smoked windshields and screens that you're going to have on the Road Glide and everything. A lot taller on this bike. So yeah, you good wind deflection. I would ride the bike stock and see how the wind deflection is for you. If you're taller, you might need to raise the windshield up a little bit if you're one of these guys that likes to have full wind isolation. Rider comfort is very good. The seat on this bike is extremely good. You don't even really need to change the seat on this motorcycle. You can go to like a hammock seat or something like that if you really want the best of the best ride comfort. But the stock seat on these bikes is extremely good. The passenger seat comfort is very good too. One of the things they did in the 2014 model year with the Project Rushmore is they deepened and they widened the seat by a couple inches in the passenger area to give the passenger even more space and more cushion surface area. And that helped out quite a bit. You've also got that wraparound backrest on the back of the King Tour Pack, which, by the way, the King Tour Pack can fit 2 full face helmets in there, by the way. And so you've got that really nice passenger comfort on here as well to keep the missus happy back there. Um, yeah, as far as long haul, it's a really good. So customization opportunities, I'm going to give this bike a 7. You've got a lot of availability in genuine HD parts, guys. I mean, this is a bike that you can customize, and coming from the factory, it's a bike that you can add highway pegs to, different seats to, like I mentioned, different windshield, like I mentioned, different lights, and so customization opportunities on these bikes are definitely plentiful. You got the Harley-Davidson's Big Twin on here, so the Big Twin engines have a lot of capability to be changed out with different fit and finishes, different parts. If you want to go like a different parts collection and change out your floorboards, your grips, your mirrors, things like that, you've got a ton of options there. So yeah, you definitely have your options there. Now, how relevant potential upgrades could be, I feel like the upgrades that people usually do to the Limited are more utility based than cosmetic based. I feel like if you're really looking for cosmetics, a lot of those guys will go for the Road Glide or the Street Glide and do a lot of the cosmetics upgrades. But utility stuff that I see a lot of people do on the Limited, a lot of guys will do that detachable tour pack. So if they want to just go around town real quick and don't want the extra top heavy weight, they take off the tour pack. That's pretty nice. Some guys will add the fog lamps out on the engine guard. Oh, and they'll also do like the highway pegs is a pretty typical one as well. But yeah, those are kind of the main ones. The windshield is kind of a popular upgrade as well. So style and looks, the Electra Glide Ultra Limited is kind of a classic Harley-Davidson look. When you see it, there's no question it's a Harley-Davidson. I'm going to give the style and looks a 7 out of 10. I feel like with the change on the fairing in the 2014 model year with the Project Rushmore, I feel like the fairing is a lot more modern looking now, which was a nice upgrade. I feel like now if you look at the old pre-2014 fairings, they just don't look, they look very, very dated. And so Harley-Davidson, I think, did a very, very good job at retaining kind of the classic look of the Batwing fairing with kind of giving it an edge a little bit and giving it more of that modern appeal to it. So I'm a big fan of the new fairing. I'm a big fan of the tour pack as well. If you look at the old pre-14 tour packs, they're just basically just a square box. The way that these new tour packs come, again 14 and newer model year, they kind of taper down as they go down, and it kind of gives the illusion that the tour pack is smaller than it really is, but really in fact it's larger. And so Harley-Davidson did an exceptional job at that as well. And so yeah, I give it a 7 out of 10. I do feel like this overall style isn't really resonating with the newer, younger generation though. I feel like Harley-Davidson more and more is kind of getting a bad rap for being an old man's bike. But a lot of that goes away when you get into real hardcore touring and going around the country and really visiting places. These bikes do very, very well, and I feel like you appreciate the mixture of both comfort and utility mixed with classic style, and then the style kind of almost becomes more appealing. But to kind of just the unexperienced onlooker, young onlooker who doesn't really ride this type of a motorcycle, I can see how the style would kind of maybe look like old man a little bit. I don't really put too much stock in that opinion, because I feel like most of the guys that say that, maybe don't ride or do this type of cruiser long distance riding. But yeah, I don't feel like this bike has in any way an identity crisis. I think Harley-Davidson, this is kind of like their bread and butter. They put the long haul touring motorcycle on the map. Everybody else is just kind of trying to play catch up and do the things right that Harley-Davidson has been doing right for years. So number 8 is the heart and soul of a Harley-Davidson. The Electra Glides have the heart and soul. I mean, this style and look has been around with Harley-Davidson, for a century. I mean, you cannot deny this look as just pure Harley-Davidson. Now, the Milwaukee-Eight plays a large part in how I rate this category, and like I've said in my past videos, I do feel like the Milwaukee-Eight has the heart and soul of a Harley-Davidson. The more I ride the Milwaukee-Eight, the more I realize that Harley-Davidson actually nailed it. They had a very tough task with trying to match modern technology with still retaining that mostly air-cooled push rod feel and big twin 45-degree angle. I mean, there's certain aspects of the motorcycle that you just can't do away with when you're making a Harley-Davidson. And so Harley and the engineers did a really good job at retaining the core values and the core structure, of what makes a Harley and what makes a big twin, while still incorporating some of the newer, more modern conveniences into the engine. So yeah, definitely kudos with Harley-Davidson on that. The fit and finish on this bike is very, very good. The paint, and I've said this many times before, the paint's extremely good. Nobody can beat Harley-Davidson's paint. And the chrome on these bikes is exceptionally good as well. They use what's called a hexavalent chrome, which is only mined in 2 places in the world. It's got like an extra molecule in there or something like that. But the chrome on a Harley lasts for a very long time. Cheaper chrome may turn yellow or dull over the years, but Harley-Davidson chrome hangs in there very, very good. So the chrome on this bike, yeah, top notch. The finish is extremely good. And this bike very much has that real heavy duty raw feel to it. A lot of the competing heavy cruisers out there, like your Goldwing, just has a lot of shroud over the engine. One of the great things and the beauty of a Harley-Davidson is you can see the engine in its full beauty and glory, and you can kind of see the engine in its raw form. And so, very minimal welding and electrical lines and things like that showing in this bike. So Harley does a very good job at hiding all that stuff, which really adds to the fit and finish of the bike as well. So 8 out of 10 for heart and soul of Harley-Davidson. As far as my final score goes on this bike, I'm going to give it an 8. I think if you're the type of rider that has a passenger quite a bit, if you have a passenger that likes to ride with you frequently and you guys do overnighters, it's very hard to beat this motorcycle. Like I said, if you prefer the Shark Nose over the Batwing, then I would say go for the Road Glide Ultra. They're very, very comparable, and you've got the 114 on the Road Glide Ultra this year as well. So yeah, pick your Batwing or your Shark Nose fairing and pick your bike accordingly. But I feel like there's a lot of people out there that should be riding this motorcycle, and then maybe they're riding a Road Glide Special or a Street Glide Special. My advice to you guys would be honest about how you're going to ride the bike, and be honest about what your needs are going to be, because with the puffy seat and the Tour Pack, this bike does have one more step in kind of that geezer glide look, for lack of a better technical term, but it does really well out there on the highway. And when you're doing those long trips, looks become less important and functionality becomes a heck of a lot more important. You're just going to enjoy the ride more on this bike. That's not to say that the ride is bad on a Road Glide or Street Glide. It's just quite a bit better, with the more travel and the suspension, and that nicer seat on here as well, and the more wind deflection with the taller windshield. The ride comfort is significantly better on this bike than a regular Street Glide is. One of my subscribers recommended that as part of my MAT score, I include value in here, so kind of what you get for your money and kind of the value there. And it's hard for me to comment on this and give commentary that's kind of be agreeable to a wide range of people, just because people see value in different things. But I have seen the price of these bikes kind of increase gradually over the years. Your full dresser, your Electric Glide Ultras, and your Limiteds. Back 10, 15 years ago, it used to be you could get a fully equipped Electric Glide, Ultra or whatever, at $22,000-23,000, and the Limited came out. They're around $23,000-24,000, and they've kind of just steadily crept up over the years. With the Milwaukee-Eight coming out and the twin cooled coming out, the twin cooled added a cost, which I can see how that would be justified. But I think eventually it's got to get to a point where some of this technology being mass produced and not really cutting edge technology anymore. I mean, the price has got to come down when you start manufacturing more and more. The other thing that I see is your Road Glide Special and your Street Glide Special with all the blacked out parts. Those bikes took a big jump when those came out in the 2018 model year. They jumped up like $2,000-3,000. When the Specials came out in 2014, they were like $24,000 or something like that. And so by adding all these blacked out parts and stretch bags, all of a sudden the price went way up. And I don't think that the price with blacked out parts is really justified, especially now that it's becoming more and more common. I talked to one of the Harley-Davidson reps in the 2018 model year annual dealer meeting, and he said that the quality control is a lot harder on the blacked out parts as opposed to the chrome, because the chrome is a lot more durable. And so quality control was having to send back more of the black parts than they ever had with the chrome. So I get it, there may be an additional cost there, but I guess long story short, guys, yeah, to get a full like a top of the line touring motorcycle like this, regardless of make or brand, you're going to be $26,000 plus. And so I feel like the Harley-Davidson, it would be nice if it was $1,000 or $2,000 less. But you know, it's with the new infotainment system and everything Harley-Davidson is coming out with lately, I don't think that we're too far out of line as far as value goes here, especially when you compare it to like Indians or the Honda Goldwing. They're all pretty much right around the same price range, which I think is a big misconception. People think that the Harley-Davidsons are way more expensive and the competitors are a lot less. They're really not. If you go to this class of motorcycle, really high-end touring motorcycle like this, they're all right around the upper 20s. So I think the value is pretty good for what you get. And it's even better if you're realistic about, like I've said in this video so many times, you're realistic about what you're going to use the bike for. If you need those extra things on there, like the lighting and the tour pack and the bigger seat and all that stuff, you get some pretty good value in this motorcycle. Anyways, guys, if I was able to help you out in this video, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I got tons of Harley-Davidson content coming out all the time. If you're looking for a touring bike or any other Harley-Davidson, you live in Southern California, you can hit me directly on Instagram or go to our website and request a quote, or you can just drop in and yeah, we'd love to earn your business on a new Harley-Davidson. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.